This is what we're going to talk about today. Facts formed around mental illness and marijuana. Death via PowerPoint edition by me. Why THC hits more. The reason THC has such a profound effect on your state of mind is because its main target, the CB1 receptor, is everywhere. It acts like a widespread volume knob for the neurotransmitters like glutamate and GABA. Global coverage, because CB1 receptors are located in the hippocampus memory, the cerebral cortex thinking, and the cerebellum movement. THC affects almost every aspect of cognitive and physical function. Sheer volume. Scientific studies often note that CB1 receptors are so numerous that they far outnumber the receptors for many other common drugs, including opioids. Why melatonin is more target specific. Melatonin is a hormone designed to signal nighttime to the body. Its receptors, MT1 and MT2, are much more specialized. The master clock. Most melatonin receptors are concentrated in the suprachiasmatic nucleus, SCN, a tiny region of the brain that controls your sleep-wake cycle, your circadian rhythm. Subtle signaling. While there are melatonin receptors in other areas, like the skin or gut, their presence in the brain is sparse compared to the dense forest of cannabinoid receptors. Melatonin doesn't take over brain signaling. The THC can. It simply nudges the existing clock. Comparison table, receptors. You guys can go ahead and look at this and pause it if you want. Summary. If we think the brain as a single building, melatonin is a single light switch in the basement that tells the building to go into night mode. THC is like a master override system that can change the setting of the lights, the thermostat, and the security system in every single room at once. So, no more nighty night, let's use THC, let's not do that. So this is what I ask it next. Or it asks me, would you like to know more about these different receptor densities affect your long-term sleep quality or memory? And then I say, and this is going to paraphrase it. If you're trying to actually, because it's speech to text, so it's not going to get it right because I wasn't using the proper microphone. If you were trying to actually go to sleep, you would actually want melatonin because it uses less brain receptors. Correct using more would keep your brain active and more awake. Speaking of which, I'm actually kind of high at right now, so that's also another reason I can't read this. That is an intuitive way to look at it, and you're touching on a key concept in neurobiology: specificity. That's like going to be a blooper one. That's going to be funny. Versus system-wide takeover. Here we go. So this is how we're going to tackle this. While more receptors doesn't automatically mean more awake, your logic is correct regarding why melatonin is often a better tool for natural sleep. Here's how the receptor math actually plays out when you're trying to drift off. The light switch versus main breaker. Melatonin, the light switch. As you noted, it hits very few receptors because the receptors are concentrated in the brain's master clock, the SCN, as we designated that earlier. Melatonin acts as a specific signal. It tells the brain it's night now. It doesn't force you to sleep. It just opens the door for your natural sleep process to take over. THC, the main breaker, because THC hits the receptors in the cortex, hippocampus, and amygdala. It is louder. It can shut down the parts of the brain that can cause anxiety, helping you fall asleep. But it also interacts with the parts of the brain that handle memory and dreaming. So you could be sleepwalking. So you may think that your dreams are not what they are, like nightmares. 2. The active problem. Biphasic effects. You're right that hitting too many receptors can backfire. THC is what scientists call biphasic, meaning it can different effects at different doses, often sedating because it slows down excitatory signaling in the low dose. In high dose can actually become a stimulant. In a higher, uh, at this point, you'll see in the video, it's about, for schizophrenics, anything over 10 is too much, anything over 10%. So a low dose would be, let's say, one or two puffs of a 10% would be like 1%, and then that's a low dose. That's a microdosing. And you got a high dose that we were at right now with 30, and then we got the 65, and he went, you were getting called out for doing drugs or whatnot, but we didn't really understand what was going on, so we're trying to give you a benefit of the doubt while showing you this. And then, so the high dose can actually become a stimulant by hitting so many receptors at once. It can trigger racing thoughts and increased heart rate or paranoia, all of which keep your brain very active and very awake. So we're trying to be guardians, so showing you this stuff. 3, sleep quality, architecture. This is where your less is more theory really shines, because melatonin is so targeted, it doesn't mess with your sleep architecture. The stages of sleep. Melatonin allows you to move naturally through light, deep, and REM sleep. THC is so widespread that it tends to suppress certain stages. Specifically, here we go, REM sleep, the stage where you dream and process emotions. While you might conk out faster, your brain isn't actually doing the cleaning and filing it needs to do, because too many cannabinoid receptors are being occupied. So it's not actually like, it's not making, you may be sleeping, but you're not sleeping. That's what I kind of was trying to say by sleepwalking. You're not really doing it right. Submarine. If your goal is a natural transition to sleep, you're 100% correct. You want to target low receptor approach of melatonin. It provides a nudge rather than a shove. Using a high receptor compound like THC is more like a chemical sedative. It might knock you out, but it's often too noisy for the brain to get a high quality rest, so you're basically resting for nothing. So why would you want to do that? It's insane. So how long have, we've been not getting the proper sleep? So we're at each other's throats because we can't even, the sleep we're getting isn't working correctly. Like in general, anybody that has schizophrenia, I'm trying to make a blanket statement in case we're understanding the household, or anyway, whoever's watching this. Would you like me to look into how the morning grogginess compares between the two based on how long they stay bound to those receptors? And I'm like, can you add that if somebody is schizophrenic, how it would definitely not be helping somebody sleep? This is for informational purposes. This is a response, usually after show thinking. This is for informational purposes only. For medical advice or diagnosis, consult a professional. It never really says that, before show thinking. So this could be biased in my opinion. So that's why I don't really like. You got to do cognitive thinking. You got to do your own research and verify that this stuff is correct. Because I did mine, but I mean, that's what people taught me in school. You gotta trust but verify that too. Show thinking. That is a critical point. While THC can be disruptive for a typical brain sleep, for someone with schizophrenia, it can be genuinely dangerous and counterproductive. When you add schizophrenia into the mix, the receptor math we discussed earlier becomes even more complicated because of how THC interacts with dopamine. The dopamine overload. The leading scientific theory of schizophrenia, the dopamine hypothesis, suggests that the brain already has overactive dopamine signaling in certain areas. THC's role. THC triggers a release of dopamine. For most people, this is part of the high, the schizophrenic conflict. In a schizophrenic brain, this extra surge of dopamine acts like pouring gasoline on a fire. Instead of helping the person sleep, it can trigger or worsen positive symptoms like hallucinations, delusions, and paranoia. 2. High density and risk. Remember how we said THC hits receptors almost everywhere? In schizophrenia, the parts of the brain that are already misfiring, like the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus, we discussed what those were earlier, are the exact areas where THC receptors density is the highest. So we're talking mobility and we're talking in the brain. So using THC to sleep can inadvertently overactivate these sensitive regions or these areas. Instead of the brain shutting down for rest, it enters a state of higher alert agitation. So, you know, like if you were to be actually think you're sleeping, you're not sleeping, and you're agitated because you say you're sleeping but you're not. I don't know. This is you get what I mean. So we're both right. Two things could be right at the same time. Melatonin, the quiet alternative. Interesting research shows that people with schizophrenia often have lower than normal natural melatonin levels. Why it helps? Because melatonin is so targeted. Remember that the single light switch thing we talked about in the basement. It doesn't interfere with the dopamine system or the parts of the brain that cause hallucinations. The result is it helps regulate the sleep-wake cycle without adding noise to the already overwhelmed system. Summary. Here you go. Here's a little summary. In short, while someone might think THC will knock them out, for a schizophrenic person, it often does the exact opposite. It wakes up the most difficult parts of the disorder, making an actual rest impossible. Why? And then, so here we are going to a different thing here. Would you like me to look into how CBD, the non-psychoactive part of cannabis, differs from THC and its effects on schizophrenic symptoms? So I don't do this right away, but we do come back to this. Does this affect your pineal gland? And I go on a tangent here to specifically try uh, to corner where it is in the frontal cortex and how it affects other parts of the brain. And like you'll be more aware of this in a minute here. Anyway, this is the target of it. This is why I bring this up. The pineal gland. Does this affect your pineal gland when you say that is this attacking your frontal cortex? Does that cause in the internet, like in between both hemispheres, like isn't isn't a way you like I said, this transcribed it. So what, like I already gave you a better explanation of what I was trying to say than it read, and it understood. To answer your question, we have to look at how these two very different parts of the brain, the pineal gland and the frontal cortex, are connected, and how THC disrupts the bridge between them. Here we go. And now we're blazing the right path. The pineal gland versus the frontal cortex. These are two different departments in the company. The pineal gland, the timekeeper, located deep in the center of the brain, the epithalamus. It sits right between the two hemispheres. Its main job is to produce melatonin to tell your body when to sleep, aka, what does that sound like? Circadian rhythm. People be always rapping about circadian rhythm. They don't even know where it comes from. And this is the reason people, their third eye, they don't even know, or if they do, they're trying to lay secret codes. I already understood, but people might not. The frontal cortex, the CEO, this is at the very front of your brain. It handles logic, decision making, and filtering your thoughts. Hint at the logic for the rapper. Cough, cough. 2, the bridge between hemispheres. You mentioned the internet in between both hemispheres, and the brain. And it's funny how I didn't really say that. I meant interwebbed, but it took it as internet, and it totally is gonna like run on that, but it's gonna be funny. You'll see. In the brain, this bridge is called the corpus callosum, in this massive bundle of fibers that allows the right and left sides to talk to each other. Hold on. Okay, that won't be happening again. Here we go. The bridge between hemispheres. Here we go. You mentioned the internet in between both hemispheres. The brain, this bridge is called corpus callosum. It's a massive bundle of fibers that allows the left and the right sides of the brain to talk to each other. how THC affects this bridge. We're talking probably something like fiber optics. Anyway, how the THC affects this bridge. Studies show that heavy THC use, especially during youth, can actually thin the white matter in this bridge. So that's what it's made of in this bridge. When the connection between hemispheres is weakened or noisy, the brain has a harder time distinguishing between an internal thought, your imagination, and an external reality, which you actually hear or see. For someone with schizophrenia, this crosstalk or noise is actually what leads to hallucinations. It's like the internet between two sides of the brain is glitching, and the frontal cortex can no longer tell what is real. Does THC attack the pineal gland? It's less of an attack and more of a chemical interference. The melatonin glitch. Researchers show that THC actually inhibits the enzymes in the pineal gland that create melatonin, so it's shutting off the body's natural ability to put itself to sleep correctly on time. The confusion, even through the pineal gland is deep in the center, THC is a global drug. It travels everywhere. It hits receptors in the hypothalamus, which controls the pineal gland, and tells it to stop the natural sleep cycle, aka circadian rhythm. Why this is a perfect storm for schizophrenia. When a person with schizophrenia takes THC to sleep, I say that with loose terms, they are accidentally doing three things at once. Breaking the filter. 1. They weaken the frontal cortex's ability to logic away scary thoughts. 2. Glitching the internet. They disrupt the connection between the brain's hemispheres, making it harder to stay grounded in reality. 3. Stopping the clock. They interfere with the pineal gland's ability to release natural melatonin, which is the only thing that can actually help the brain quiet down naturally. Instead of the brain's powering down for the night, it ends up in a state where it's tired and wired, and the logical front part of the brain's offline, and the imaginative hallucinatory parts of the brain running wild. And here we go. Would you like me to explain how this hemisphere's glitch specifically leads to hearing voices, symptoms that often prevent sleep? Please, yes, do that. Show thinking. When someone says schizophrenia, the way THC interacts with the brain's internal internet, I like how it's going to continue to use that so you guys can keep up. The corpus callosum creates a specific kind of chaos that makes sleep almost impossible. 1. The glitch in the corpus callosum. The corpus callosum is a massive bridge of white matter that connects the left and the right hemispheres. In schizophrenia, the bridge is often structured differently or leaky. THC's impact. Research shows that a high-potency THC can actually cause microstructural damage to the bridge. The result, when the bridge isn't working, the two halves of the brain can't sync up. Like a video call where the audio and the video are out of sync, and the brain starts to feel disconjoined. 2. Why the brain hears voices. Auditory hallucinations often happen because of failure of self-in monitoring. Normal brain, when you have an inner thought, like thinking you need to go to sleep, your frontal cortex sends out a signal to your auditory cortex saying, heads up, I'm about to say something in our head. This is just an internal thought. Schizophrenic brain press THC because THC suppresses the frontal cortex and disrupts the communication bridge. The corpus callosum, that heads up signal never arrives, so it's just coming from the air. The confusion. The auditory cortex receives the thought but thinks it came from the outside world. To the person, it doesn't feel like it was a thought. It sounds like a physical voice in the room. Not unlike what we're doing right now, talking. The nightmare of tired but wired. For someone trying to sleep, this creates a terrifying loop. Melatonin would normally quiet the brain. THC instead releases dopamine, which acts like a stimulant in a schizophrenic brain. The frontal cortex logic goes offline, so the person can tell themselves, this is just the drug. The auditory cortex starts hearing internal thoughts as external voices because the internet bridge in between hemispheres is glitching. Key takeaway. While a healthy person might just feel high, a person with schizophrenia using THC to sleep is essentially turning off their brain's ability to distinguish between their own thoughts and reality. This leads to a state of high alert paranoia that is just the exact opposite of rest. This video explains how a link between high potency THC and psychosis works, which is exactly why it interferes so heavily with the brain's ability to rest in those with schizophrenia.
Cannabis isn't quite what it used to be. It's a lot stronger.
In the 1970s, cannabis potency used to be, 3 or 4%, and now the average is, in the 20s.
A new report in the Canadian Medical Association Journal last week says concentrations of THC, the main psychoactive component of cannabis, is up 5-fold in Canada compared with 20 years ago. Also up, the authors say, is the risk of psychosis for those who use high-potency cannabis frequently.
The higher THC provides, a higher high, but also higher harm. And what we know is that there is an association, a link between high cannabis use and psychosis. People may develop schizophrenia spectrum illness younger if they're using cannabis. And we know that if they have psychosis, it's destabilized by cannabis.
Symptoms, Dr. Buckley says, can range from temporary episodes of paranoia to a dislocation from reality, including seeing or hearing things that are not there.
And it's a real sign, that cannabis isn't a good fit for that person.
Experts find that the risk is higher for people frequently using cannabis with over 10% of THC and for those with a history of mental disorders like depression and anxiety. Younger males also appear to be at higher risk. But while the link is known, causality is not.
Is there a time when people who wouldn't have developed schizophrenia are developing it because of cannabis? So that's what we're looking at now. We're not sure.
Cannabis use also affects different people very differently.
If you look hard, you might see that there's, changes in your relationships or your job or your schoolwork or your health is being impacted. Those are signs that, you might be shifting into a different way of using cannabis that you probably want to avoid.
Nivrita Ganguly, Global News, Toronto.
Sora 2 video generation is not available in our region.
It is if you're on Artlist.
Huh?
What? Sora 2 is now on Artlist. The most advanced AI video model is
Would you like me to explain how CBD interacts with these same receptors differently, or should we look at other natural ways to support the pineal gland? Go ahead and explain CBD. This is where I say I wanted to know, and I'm just going to skip that. Here is the CBD's effects on the two key areas, the frontal cortex, the logic center, and the pineal gland, the sleep center, especially for somebody with schizophrenia. The frontal cortex, the switch is now a dimmer. The negative allosteric modulator. It's supposed to be rheostatic. That's what a dimmer is. It was a rheostat, not an LS. I don't know. It's so weird if they're going to use that term. This is a fancy scientific term for dimmer switch. It's not. It's a rheostat. They should really redo that. CBD doesn't turn, and this is an AI generating this. So I did kind of do my own thing and edit this, but I want to show you how sometimes it can be wrong, and I need you guys to do your own research and not just let it rule your life. Okay, so here you go. It sits on the side of the receptor and makes it harder for THC to bind to it, fixing the schizophrenia glitch. Because it dims the signal, CBD can actually help the frontal cortex stay online instead of the brain losing its filter and hearing voices. CBD helps the logic center stay in control. There you go. That's what we're going to want. If we're going to have to do CBD at night, or we're doing melatonin gummies and CBD at night, and eliminating the nightly ritual. Smoke 2 joints at night. We're not doing that. That's not for people with this. The dopamine, unless the joints are completely low in THC, like leaf, and they're completely under 10%, then maybe. But that's just bad for your health, and especially at an older age of 50, you shouldn't be smoking in general. So here we go. The dopamine guard. CBD also interacts with dopamine receptors similarly to some modern antipsychotic medications. it helps prevent the dopamine flood that causes the racing thoughts and paranoia that keeps someone with schizophrenia wide awake. 2. The pineal gland and the sleep signal. While THC can actually block the enzymes that make melatonin, CBD's relationship with the pineal gland is more supportive, protecting the melatonin cycle. CBD doesn't force the pineal gland to work, but it reduces cortisol, the stress hormone. High cortisol is the enemy of the pineal gland. It tells the gland, don't make melatonin yet, we're in danger. The result, by lowering the alarm bells in the brain, CBD allows the pineal gland to do its job naturally. It doesn't knock you out like a drug. It simply clears the path for your natural melatonin. It can take over, reintroducing you to your natural cycle of circadian rhythm. Comparison THC versus CBD in the brain. Here's a nice little graph for you. A vital note for schizophrenia. Even though CBD often seen as the good one, some recent studies have found a plot twist. In people with schizophrenia who are already using high-potent THC, adding CBD sometimes intensifies the side effects or making memory worse. It's a very delicate balance. The brain is already sensitive, so adding more technicians, CBD, to the system is currently being overrun by THC, can sometimes create more confusion in the brain. So maybe we should just step to melatonin first, and then wean yourself back onto some type of CBD after. Would you like me to find some specific natural ways to support the pineal gland that don't involve cannabis at all? Maybe we should go asking it this, like light therapy or specific, and I actually know ways to do this if you are wondering. Can I see the technicalities between the, it's totally now it's taking what I'm saying right. So I'm just gonna like click next. I was asking it about its meds and how it works with it. Would you like me to show you the certain floods or habits like caffeine interacts with schizophrenia in a similar way? No, let's just add a thing on there like nicotine and what would that do? So I'm adding that on top of that with the obviously the Zyprexa and the other stuff. A neurologist would look at this and clash between three different chemical forces. One that creates chaos, THC, one that acts as a shield for dopamine, Zyprexa, and one that acts as a force to stabilize the brain's electricity, Depakote. 1. The Zyprexa versus THC tug-of-war dopamine. Zyprexa is an atypical antipsychotic. Its main job is to sit on the B2 dopamine receptors like a protective cap, preventing them from overfiring the conflict. THC is a dopamine releaser when a person with schizophrenia. Excuse me. When a person with schizophrenia takes THC, it tries to flood the brain with dopamine to create a high. The reaction. If Zyprexa is doing its job, it blocks the dopamine from landing. This is why many people on Zyprexa report that they don't feel as high from cannabis. However, because THC is so loud, hitting all those CB1 receptors we talked about earlier, they're everywhere, it can sometimes punch through the Zyprexa shield, causing a sudden spike in paranoia or voices despite the medication. 2. The Depakote factor. The electrical floor. Depakote is a mood stabilizer that works by increasing GABA, the brain's primary braking chemical. It effectively raises the seizure threshold and prevents the brain's electricity from spiking too high, which causes mania or agitation. THC's interference. THC actually inhibits the release of GABA in certain parts of the brain. How convenient. The result, Depakote is trying to push the brake pedal down, but THC is trying to cut the brake lines. This makes the brain electrically unstable for a schizophrenic person. This instability often manifests as rapid cycling moods or a jolt of anxiety that prevents the pineal gland from ever starting the sleep cycle. 3. The metabolism glitch, the liver and blood. This is technically, many people miss this. Smoking cannabis actually changes how your body handles Zyprexa. The speed up. Compounds in cannabis smoke, not just the THC, trigger the liver to work faster. This can burn off the Zyprexa in your blood up to 30 and 50% times faster than normal. That's like half of it's not even working. The consequence, a person might be taking their prescribed dose of Zyprexa, but because they are smoking THC, the actual amount of medicine reaching their brain is way too low. They are effectively unprotected, leaving the frontal cortex vulnerable to the hemisphere glitch we talked about earlier and the voices we discussed. Here's a little summary of in a table. The neurologist's conclusion. If you're on Zyprexa and Depakote, your brain is working very hard to stay level. THC acts like a massive chemical storm that hits the brain from three sides. It weakens the medicine, liver metabolism, overrides the shield, dopamine flood, and cuts the brakes. GABA, inhibition. This is why for someone with schizophrenia, using THC for sleep often feels like descending into a dream while still awake, aka sleepwalking. The brain is too chemically busy fighting the drug to ever actually rest. 1. The liver vacuum, the smoke effect. This is where most critical technicality here. Hold on. Okay. This is the most critical technicality. It's not actually the nicotine itself, but the hydrocarbons in cigarette smoke that cause the problem. Zyprexa, olanzapine, metabolism. Zyprexa is broken down in the liver, which you often are so worried about, but smoking is just as bad. So Zyprexa is broken down in the liver by an enzyme called CYP1A2. The interaction, cigarette smoke makes the enzyme work in overdrive. It effectively sucks the Zyprexa out of your blood before it can even reach your brain. The math. Smokers often need 30 to 50% more Zyprexa. We're talking cigarette smokers, not just weed smokers. So you're doing both, bud. So you're not, all the medication you're taking isn't even doing anything. And even if you're taking the medication, it's not doing anything. So if you're spitting it out, it's going to be even more crazy. So we really got to have you take it so we can understand what you need. We don't know. We're trying to do it with what the doctor's saying because she's reading your lab work, but we're trying to do and understand that if you're telling the truth, this is what the labs say, but when we find stuff on the ground, it's saying a different story, so how can we really trust? So we might just have to do a reset on no weed and no cigarette until we can get this under control. And thus we can be cooperative. The interaction. Cigarette smoke makes the enzyme work in overdrive. Hold on, we already read that. Zyprexa. Here, I'll just redo this one. The math. Smokers often need 30 to 50% more Zyprexa just to get the same effect as a non-smoker. Like I said, we were talking about cigarette smoke. Someone smokes a cigarette after taking their meds, they are essentially flushing half of their protection down the drain. The frontal cortex. It's a boost why people smoke. Neurologically, people with schizophrenia often smoke heavily because of something called hypofrontality. Hypofrontality. The frontal cortex, the logic center, is naturally sluggish. That's funny. Oh, I'm sitting here being sluggish on the sentence. Nicotine's role. Nicotine hits alpha-7 receptors in the frontal cortex, which gives the brain a temporary spark of clarity. It helps the left and right hemispheres communicate for a brief moment. The trap. It's a trap. While it feels like it's helping you think, the nicotine is simultaneously causing that liver vacuum effect which weakens the Zyprexa that is supposed to be stopping the voices. It's a temporary fix that causes a long-term disaster. 3. The THC plus nicotine plus Zyprexa triple threat. When you combine all three, your brain becomes a battlefield. Zyprexa is trying to shield your brain, but the cigarette smoke is draining the medicine out of your system. THC is flooding your brain with dopamine, trying to punch through the now weakened Zyprexa shield. Nicotine is giving you a 5-minute clarity boost, followed by a crash that makes the THC paranoia feel even sharper. The nervous system scorecard. Check this out. Write that down for your notes. Why sleep is impossible in the slate. Take 4. Why sleep is impossible in this state. If you smoke a spliff, tobacco mixed with cannabis to go to sleep. Spliff's often a British term. The nicotine raises your heart rate and wakes your cortex up. The smoke drains your Zyprexa, leaving your shield at 50% strength. The THC rushes into and through the weakened shield, triggering the hemisphere glitch we were talking about, and it makes your internal thoughts sound like external voices, aka the glitch, hemisphere glitch, voices. The brain is too busy processing these conflicting signals to ever enter the theta or delta waves needed for deep sleep. This is why many people in this situation feel like they are dreaming while awake or tripping instead of sleeping. Would you like me to look into how much vaping, which has nicotine but no smoke, changes the liver interaction compared to traditional cigarettes? Yes. The de-induction trap, Zyprexa olanzapine. Here is a neurological breakdown of how the vape, 50 milligrams we used, interacts with Zyprexa, Depakote, and THC. I know we stopped it, but there's a reason why you wanted to. This is the most important technicality. Vaping does not have the vacuum cleaner effect of the cigarette smoke. The reason, as we discussed, it's the smoke, hydrocarbons from the fire that spreads up your liver, speeds up your liver. Vaping has no fire. So unless you're burning there's cotton inside there, which you could be burning if you hold on to the button too long, but it's not talking about that. If you're doing everything normally, vaping has no fire. So your liver slows back down to normal. The risk, if you're smoking cigarettes and then switched to a 50 milligram vape, and you didn't even switch, bro, you were doing it all, your Zyprexa levels in your blood will suddenly shoot up by 30 to 50%, almost giving you a mini, and here's the result. You might suddenly feel extremely groggy, dizzy, or zombie-like because it's like we were saying, stroke. Because you are essentially getting a massive overdose of your own medicine without changing your pill count. So if you do start picking up back your pills, you see what I mean? Why you just need to keep being more consistent. It makes everything more difficult, including on yourself. So don't do it. 2, the 50 milligrams nicotine super spark. A 50 milligram nicotine salt vape is an incredibly high dose, often called 5% in pods, in the brain, while a cigarette gives you a slow rise, and a 50 milligram vape hits the alpha 7 nicotine receptors in your frontal cortex like a lightning bolt. The schizophrenic fix: for 10 minutes your brain feels clear. It fixes the sluggishness of schizophrenia temporarily. The crash: because the dose is so high, it causes a massive release of adrenaline, your heart rate spikes, and your fight or flight system turns on. This directly blocks the pineal gland from releasing melatonin, making sleep nearly impossible. That's why when we left the vape out there, he never slept, and it turned into this. 3, the THC in the vape plus Depakote collision. When you add THC, Depakote into this, you create the electrical storm. Depakote is trying to keep your brain's electricity low and stable on the floor, like we described earlier. THC is making the internal internet, corpus callosum, glitchy and disorganized. 50 milligrams of nicotine is acting like a massive stimulant, jacking the brain's volume way up in terms of we're not going to get any sleep from this. Neurological note. When you combine high doses of nicotine vaping with THC, you're essentially speedballing your internal thoughts. The nicotine makes those thoughts faster and sharper, while the THC makes those thoughts externalize into voices, so he's hearing them. You know what I mean? Comparison: smoking versus vaping with Zyprexa. Here's your scorecards. In case you're keeping count and you want to do index cards later, people. It's a good way to keep track of this information. Summary for sleep. If you're trying to sleep and you use the vape plus THC, you're creating a chemical paradox. This is what I was trying to say in the last slide. But here's the summary. Your Zyprexa is now at a higher level, making you feel heavy and tired. But your nicotine and THC have jacked you up, adrenaline and dopamine, making your mind race. You end up in a state of heavy paralysis, where your body feels like lead because of Zyprexa, but your mind is screaming with voices and racing thoughts because of high doses of nicotine and THC. Would you like me to draft a note that you can show your doctor about switching to vaping so they can adjust your Zyprexa dose safely? And I counteract this saying that you quit it, and that to just add the cigarettes into the equation back. The liver equation, the Zyprexa burn-off. Senecas and clippers, I get a little bit more detailed so you understand, are heavily tobacco products. Clippers are filtered cigars, often contain even higher levels of hydrocarbons that trigger liver enzymes than standard cigarettes. The reaction. The liver is now hyperdrive. It treats the Zyprexa like a toxin that needs to be cleared out immediately. The result: even if the person takes the Zyprexa exactly as prescribed, the combination of Seneca and clipper smoke can drop the amount of medicine in their blood by 50 or more. The unprotected brain. The person is essentially walking around with half of a dose of antipsychotic medication, leaving their frontal cortex completely vulnerable to the actual hallucination effect. 2. The receptor equation. The adrenaline overload. Hello. Hello. Girls. Take 5. The receptors equation. The adrenaline overload. Adding 50 milligram nicotine salts to vape on top of cigarettes and the cigars is like pouring jet fuel onto a campfire, my dude. Nicotine stacking. The Senecas and clippers provide a slow burn of nicotine that stays in the blood. The 50 milligram vape provides shocks of extreme nicotine, adrenal, and the pineal gland. The massive amount of nicotine triggers a constant release of norepinephrine, adrenaline. I totally butchered that, but I'm not going to try to sit there and redo that. The sleep block, adrenaline, is the anti-melatonin. So, I mean, if you're going to sit there and say you're not sleeping and you have this adrenaline stuff and you're having bad dreams, well, this is why, my dude. This is why. The massive amount of nicotine triggers a constant release of adrenaline. So, as long as the 50 milligram salt and Seneca smoke are in the system, the pineal gland is chemically blocked. It cannot release the signal to sleep because the brain thinks it's in a life or death state. The THC component, the hallucination trigger. Now add the THC to a brain where Zyprexa is being burned off by the Senecas and the adrenaline is spiked by a vape. The glitch is magnified, as I'm talking about voices, because the Zyprexa shield is so low due to smoke. The THC has a clear path to the dopamine receptors. The voices, the nicotine from the clipper vape, makes thoughts move faster, and the THC makes the corpus callosum, the bridge, glitch and hear voices. The experience, the person isn't just high, they're likely experiencing active psychosis, hearing voices that feel 100% real because there isn't enough Zyprexa left in their blood to mute them. The final chemical equation. Here's some more for your cards. We'll just follow it this way. The resulting state, toxic wakefulness. The person is in a state where the body is physically exhausted, but the brain is chemically preventing from shutting down. They are too stimulated to sleep. Nicotine and adrenaline. They are too unprotected to be calm. Low Zyprexa. They are too disconnected from reality. To rest. THC. The voices. Important. If this person stops smoking the Seneca's clippers but keeps vaping, the Zyprexa levels will skyrocket because their liver vacuum stopped. This can lead to extreme toxicity, fainting, slowed heart rate, severe confusion. Would you like me to explain how they can safely transition away from smoke without causing a Zyprexa overdose in their system? Okay, so if this goes, and again, so like I said, this is completely butchering what I said. So we're just going to skip it and see where it goes. Statistically, the average life expectancy for somebody, oh yeah, that's what I was going to do. Like, how hard is it for your heart to do all this, right? So this is what I'm trying to say. It's probably not smart, right? Then you might even be giving yourself a hole in your heart, like a heart murmur, bro. Somebody with schizophrenia is about 15 to 20 years shorter than general population. If a person is currently 50, a neurologist and a cardiologist would be looking at 4 specific clocks that are running faster than normal. 4 clocks. You got 4 things inside of you that are supposedly, running overtime, and you're telling me that that's good? The metabolic clock, the meds. You're taking Zyprexa and Depakote. It's very hard on the body's metabolism, insulin resistance. Both drugs are not notorious for causing weight gain and metabolic syndrome. After 15 years or so, in some cases, the risk of type 2 diabetes is extremely high. Organ stress, Depakote, is processed by the liver and can be tough on the pancreas. Zyprexa can lead to a high cholesterol and fatty liver. The result, by age 50, the body may physically feel like it's 65 or 70 due to the long-term metabolic strain. 2. Cardiovascular clock. The smoke and vape. This is the biggest risk factor for lifespan. The combination of Seneca clipper smoke and the vape salt creates a constant state of vascular tension. Arteries, nicotine and smoke that cause the arteries to stiffen and narrow. Heart strain. Because the nicotine is so high, stacking cigarettes plus the vape, the heart is likely beating much faster and harder than it would 24/7. The math, schizophrenia and heavy smoking plus metabolic meds creates a 3 times to 4 times higher risk of cardiovascular event, heart attack. So you're basically 4 times likely to have a heart attack doing what you were doing just a couple months ago. This is why we're asking, did you have a stroke? We're not trying to be like, a jerk, but we are watching you do this to yourself, and we are being concerned, so we'd be in the wrong if we didn't say anything, right? Right. Heart attack or stroke by the time reaches their 50s or 60s. 3 times to 4 times higher risk of cardiovascular event, heart attack, or stroke by the time a person reaches their 50s or 60s. The neurological clock, the THC. Using THC for 15 plus years alongside these meds doesn't necessarily kill you, but it ages the brain's cognitive ability. Gray matter, long-term, high-dose THC in schizophrenic people is associated with a faster thinning of gray matter in the brain. Cognitive fatigue, the consistent chemical tug-of-war. Meds trying to quiet the brain while THC nicotine tries to wake it up. Leads to profound brain fog, memory loss, and the person enters their 50s. 4. The liver burnout. After 15 years of smoking Senecas, the liver have been in overdrive trying to clear the smoke toxins in Zyprexa. As a person hits 50, the liver naturally slows down. If the person suddenly stops smoking but keeps taking the same dose of Zyprexa, the medicine can suddenly become toxic because their liver can no longer vacuum it out. This can cause the heart rate to drop dangerously low. Expected lifespan. What the data says, for a person in this specific situation, schizophrenia plus all the stuff I've said in the last slide, you're in a danger zone. It's typically between ages of 55 and 65. Most common causes of death is not the mental illness itself, but cardiovascular disease, heart failure, or respiratory failure, COPD, lung issues. The good news is research shows that if a person can even reduce the consumable smoke, the Senecas and clippers, or move towards just vaping or patches, the liver vacuum stops, the heart strain stops, and they can add 5 to 10 years back onto the life expectancy almost immediately. Here's some slides to take down. Alright, we're getting into the end of the video here, folks. I hope you liked it. If you like it, please like and subscribe, and there'll be more content out that piques interest. Would you like me to look into specific warning signs of Zyprexa toxicity so you know what to look for in the smoke habits change? You can redo this without the nicotine vape thing because he quit, and add in there that he has somebody that comes over from overseas and likes a celebratory drink with him, but he is on medication and he likes to sneak drinking in with this. Let's show how bad this is with the medication, and it says that he can't drink on, and you can explain this to all of us. When we remove the vape but add alcohol, explicitly celebratory or heavy drinking, into a system that already has Zyprexa, Depakote, THC, and heavy tobacco smoke, Senecas, and clippers, we move from a state of chemical chaos into a state of controversial nervous system failure, CNS. Why we found you like laying on the side behind the tattoo shop or whatever. Ralph doesn't talk to you because he thought you were dead, bro. We thought you died. Here is the neurological equation for why sneaking drinks on these specific medications is so dangerous and why we wanted to go talk to Jens. Respiratory depression, trap alcohol plus Zyprexa. Both alcohol and Zyprexa are CNS depressants. We were talking about that earlier, the central nervous system. Here we go. So they are central nervous system depressants. They both tell the brain to slow down, but they do it in different ways. The interaction. When they are combined, they don't just add together 1 plus 1 equals 2. They multiply each other. 1 times 1 equals 5. Okay, yeah, that's good. When is that ever okay? The risk. This combination can slow down the autonomic part of the brain, the part that tells your lungs to breathe when you sleep, because the person is over 50 and has been on meds for 15 years. Their breathing drive is already less resilient. The sneak danger. If he is sneaking drinks, his doctor and his guests don't know this. The central nervous system is being suppressed. He could fall asleep and simply stop breathing. Respiratory arrest. 2. The liver and ammonia risk. Alcohol and Depakote. This is a very technical but vital point for somebody on Depakote. The liver's job. Depakote is processed by the liver. Alcohol is a liver toxin. So those two combined are obviously two negatives. Are not going to make a positive there. The conflict. When he drinks, the liver prioritizes the alcohol. This causes Depakote levels to fluctuate wildly. The toxic result. Depakote can sometimes cause a buildup of ammonia in the blood. Alcohol makes this much more likely. High ammonia levels in the brain cause encephalopathy, a state of extreme confusion, tremors, and even coma. Do you want to be in a coma, bro? No one wants to be in a coma, right? And Anastasia doesn't want to be in a coma. In a person with schizophrenia, this toxic confusion can look like a psychotic break, but it's actually the liver failing to clean the blood. 3. The liver vacuum conflict. The Seneca smoke factor. Remember, he is still smoking Senecas and clippers, the vacuum. The smoke is still vacuuming the Zyprexa out of its blood. The alcohol twist. Alcohol also affects liver enzymes, which the smoke speeds the liver up. Heavy drinking eventually exhausts the liver and cause it to slow down. The result, his Zyprexa levels will be so yo-yoing. 1 hour, the medicine is too low, leading to voice hallucinations, and the next hour, because of the alcohol, the medicine is too high, leading to extreme sedation and him passing out. 4. The celebratory psychological trigger. When a guest comes from overseas, the celebratory nature usually involves lowered inhibitions. Alcohol shutdowns the frontal cortex, CEO. The THC loop. Once the CEO is drunk, the person is more likely to use more THC. The voices return. Alcohol plus THC plus low Zyprexa from smoke. A high probability of psychological episode during the celebration. And hasn't that been what's happening, Evan? Here is literally was like corresponded since your birthday. And continuing, because we are proactively giving you double types of cigarettes and are just negating any effects we are doing. This is why when you're in a hospital, they don't give you cigarettes, brother. They don't give you weed. Even though it's legal and you have a medical card, they won't give it to you because it won't work. The neurologist's warning. For a man over 50 who has been on these meds for 15 years, sneaking drinks is a silent killer. Because his body is already working overtime to handle the Depakote and Senecas, the alcohol acts like a final straw for the liver and the heart. He might feel like he is just having a good time with his guests, but internally his brain is struggling to stay awake while the drugs and alcohol are fighting to shut his system down. And that's all, folks. So, thanks I will not say any names, but to who this may concern, I really do consider this a warning. I don't want to ever have to say I told you so, ever, but I do consider this to be a warning to anybody who is considering doing a binge on any type of drug and they're doing anything like antipsychotics, and how this is completely just not what they need. So thank you for supporting this channel and the search for truth and everything along the way, guys. Have a great rest of your day. And if this is night, have a great night. Goodbye. Oh, babe, come over here and say goodbye.
Oh, I'm not on video.
No.
Okay, goodbye. Thanks for joining the stream.
Come here and try that one more time. I couldn't see.
It's not
I couldn't.
a stream.
Yeah. Oh,
Thanks
got that.
for watching.
Did you watch the bar here and make sure this is over here when you're talking?
Okay. Where? Over there.
See the black bar? How my voice is all the way up here?
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Goodbye. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.
Encephalopathy. No, encephalopathy. This is like.
Encephalitis? No, it has to do.
Yeah, encephalopathy. Yeah, encephalopathy. Yeah, that was. Thanks, hon. I would not have been able to figure. Yeah, it's a double PH, and I got the tongue and my broken tooth, and then okay. Take 3. Oh, I'm sorry, we're at 6. Take 6. The toxic result. Depakote can sometimes cause a buildup of ammonia in the blood. Alcohol makes this much more likely. High ammonia levels in the brain cause encephalopathy. And so that word right there.
Let me actually read it.
Or are you going to read it? Because I'm going to have to do it. Take 7. Or take 6.5.
Encephalopathy.
Encephalopathy? I can't say that. Smiling? I can't smile and say that.
I messed up.
How am I supposed to say that?
Encephalopathy.
You say that to the mic right now. And I'm going to edit it in.
It's either encephalopathy or encephalopathy. Encephalopathy. I mean, that's either one.
Take what she said.
But I think it has to do with the brain. Encephalitis.
It's ammonia in the blood and it's talking about high ammonia levels in the brain cause this. What she said, folks. I have no idea. We only got a few more slides left here. We're probably going to do a part 2 on this, and we'll talk more about the risks about this and that, but this is more educational purposes. All right, so here's a